Welcome everyone to the second series of Luxe Visionaries, the podcast powered by Lexden Luxe. We are here, new year, new location, new contributors. Is gonna be amazing. As you know, I am Rebecca, Vice President of Lexden Luxe, and I have the extreme fortune of having with me two amazing partners, Professor Klaus from Lexden Luxe and Ferruccio Rossi, the CEO of Sanlorenzo Med. And thank you so much, Ferruccio, for the opportunity for being here. The lounge here in Monaco is amazing, and we're really so happy to be here. Thank you very much. Thank you for making this happen.
Thank you.
And really also, we want to extend our gratitude to the whole Sanlorenzo team, because without them, this wouldn't be possible. So they're there in the behind the scenes, and they're those that make it happen.
Yes.
With this episode that is going to be dedicated to the gatekeepers of luxury, we're going to try to explore how ultra-high-net-worth individuals' decision-making is influenced by a series of very relevant partners. And that's why we decided to have two amazing professionals today with us. Here on my right, you can see Mark. Mark is the founder of Smart Yacht Marketing. And here on my left, we have Richard, who is a senior partner at Burgess. We will try to really investigate what gatekeepers are and why they are so pivotal for the whole luxury industry. So let me start with Professor Klaus. We as Lexden Luxe always preach that there's some science behind the luxury industry. So we can tell that gatekeepers are becoming more and more important because we have data, we have numbers, and we have some scientific basis. So can you elaborate on that? Why can we actually say that they exist?
Thank you for the question, Rebecca. There's a lot of things we can say about the new gatekeepers because these are trends that we see for the last 5 years coming more and more from an emerging theme to the dominant theme. Gatekeepers in general, one thing we always have to realize, people are thinking about a particular context. We have here 3 great people from yachting. So when we think about yachting, most people say, how is Burgess versus my competition? How is Sanlorenzo versus my competition? Well, the first thing we do have to realize, based upon conversation with over 300 ultra-high net worth individuals, we are not benchmarking one brand against the other. We benchmarking, for example, your business, Mark, with the advice for clients against the other advice I get from my family offices, from my lawyer, and so on. So first we have to realize that benchmarking is independent from the industry. People look at, for example, when you buy something online, some people would say our online is better than the other. But people say it must be as easy as buying on Alibaba or being on AliExpress or being on Amazon. So benchmarks are different. And the same trends we see for gatekeepers. When we started our research in 2016 for Lexden Luxe, we looked at the importance of the brands. It was all dominated by the manufacturers, like the Sanlorenzos of the world, or the Burgesses of the world, or the Frasers of the world, who said, it's our brand that attracts people. What we see more and more is that the shift goes towards people who were not on the radar before. Today, the driving force of deciding where I'm going to get my boat from, where it's going to be built, and so on, are other people, such as architects, designers, wealth management companies, and family offices. So unlike in the car manufacturing business, where we always say it's about the brand, we have to realize that in yachting in particular, it's other people who have a larger influence regarding that. And this is something that became more and more relevant in the 5 years. And today, it's almost, for some clients, it's an afterthought. They said, I like the way it looks. Now you're going to figure out who's going to build it for me. So there's a completely different approach that we see. And gatekeepers are not anymore in the yachting industry. Wealth management, family offices, lawyers, registration companies. They come from, while they are in the ecosystem, they come from a different field. So these are some very important trends that I believe needs to be addressed. And as Rebecca pointed out, it's always science-based. So our master is the truth, it's always evidence, no anecdotes.
And Ferruccio, where do you stand on this from a shipyard perspective? Are you seeing this shift? Are you seeing this change? How important are brokers and the set of relations around the final clients?
My view about that is that every shipyard needed to be very coherent with its DNA. We need to be, very clear about what we are, very clear about our mission, very clear about what we can deliver to a very specific client. We are focused on to be the timeless of tomorrow, which means that we cannot be too much focus on the short term, but we need to create things that last through the years. In doing so, we really need the people that are in direct contact with the clients to understand who we are and to tell them, this is Sanlorenzo. Then that can be the fit for you, can be not, but this is Sanlorenzo. And that is so important for us that those people understand us. That's the reason why we have created this lounge, to be in the place where all those people are spending their time, where it's super easy for them to come to us and to understand the mission of Sanlorenzo. That is different from other shipyards, and we want to be different. We want to be for a specific client, and we want our partners, the gatekeepers, as you call them, to understand us so that they can explain to their clients, because we don't want to sell ourselves. We want those clients to come to us because they see a fit.
Absolutely. And I think this also connects very well to a few conversations that we had before today on the importance of really building the long-term relationship and making sure that one-time customers are not really a thing, but you as Sanlorenzo accompany them throughout the years. And the moment they grow, the moment they are able to make a bigger investment, you are there and you can support on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And so, Richard, what about the brokers? Because clearly it is a very talked about topic, but the broker is so important for ultra high net worth individuals because you at a certain point become the person that the ultra high net worth individual goes to take care of their vacation, for instance, when it comes to charters or even ownership. So how can you make sure that everything is taken care of? How are you a good gatekeeper for the person?
Well, I think it's interesting whether you're we're taking from a yacht sales perspective or purchase perspective or a charter aspect. It's not necessarily about the sale and the charter, it's about relationship management. And I think that's very, very key. You build these relationships over a very, very long period of time. I'm talking, I was just in Palm Beach recently and I was meeting with a client that I've been talking to for probably 8 or 9 years. They haven't yet done something with us. I mean, they're still in that process of actually understanding exactly what they want to get out of yachting. And I think it's interesting, there was a conversation that you were saying about people coming from outside of the yachting world. And I think that's true. I think there can be that initial introduction that may come from outside of the yachting world. But once you're in it and you want to get a true understanding of what your needs are, that's when the role of the broker becomes particularly important. And a good broker will be focused very much on their client. I always say you've got two ears and one mouth, and make sure you're listening and not talking. That's why you really need to listen to the needs of your client, then build up something, whether it's a charter that is truly unique to them from a charter perspective, that they're going to have the most amazing time. Because what you were saying again was we want to make sure these people have an incredible time and they stay within the industry and they carry on chartering or they carry on building and they carry on buying and they carry on selling because they're having a great time. So it's really to get that true understanding of exactly what your client's needs are and being able to guide them in the right direction, whether it's charter or purchase or if they're looking at building. But the key is speak to your client, understand their needs and be very honest and very truthful.
Absolutely. So now connecting to this, Mark, clearly the brand has a role. How can we make sure that us as a business deliver the right message to the end client? Because eventually our final goal is to support the relationship, but actually have a final transaction. Transaction clearly is not the focus of that, but how can the messaging and the marketing around our business support the creation of this relationship and then move to the final transaction?
Good question. I mean, it depends on the client and the client journey, where the client is on the client journey. So, you know, in my book, I talk about the outsiders, the newbies, and the sea dogs. So you have people who are coming, like Dr. Phil was saying earlier, who are coming from the outside. They've never been in yachting before. They've only just realized that maybe a yacht is much more than just a vessel from getting to A to B. You can actually have fun on it and have an experience on it. But they're outsiders. They don't know who's who. They don't really know how it works, but they're enticed by something they can do. How you sell and how you build relations with those people and how you market to those people and the importance of your brand and your brand messaging. And like you were saying, getting across the notion of what is our DNA? Who are we? What do we represent? The way you do that for those guys and girls, the outsiders, is different to the way you'll do with the newbies. Because like Richard was saying, a newbie has already come into the industry. They've got a bit of an idea about who's who and how it works. So you'll be talking to them about different things. When you talk to an outsider, they don't know the difference between a Sanlorenzo and a Benetti or an Ocean Coat. When you talk to a newbie, they're starting to get that idea. By the time you get to a Sea Dog, they already know. In fact, they probably know you and they know all the different CEOs and whatever else. So it's a refined message. But it comes down to what you were saying earlier. Where branding comes in, if it's done well, it's about getting that message across. And you remember the old cliche that marketing owns the message, sales owns the relationship.
Yes.
But the two work together.
Yeah.
They have to. So branding is about making sure that the outsiders, the newbies and the Sea Dogs understand when they hear the name Burgess or they hear the name Sanlorenzo, they know what that means. And in marketing, we control that.
Very nice point. So my question now for all of you, I would say, is talking about gatekeepers. Who is the person or maybe the system, the network that actually controls and owns the client?
I believe no one owns the client first and foremost. Exactly. I think we can all agree on that. We are all here to serve the client in one way or another. This is our job. So owning it in itself is like an oxymoron. But one thing I heard from every single one of you is reflecting in our MEPA framework. One thing is we need to deliver it consistent. So what Mark mentioned between branding, marketing and sales, it needs to be coherent. So we cannot come from marketing and say, this is our message, now go and deliver it. As a matter of fact, I like the Sanlorenzo approach, and we talked about this. Also the relationship, post-purchase is important. Not just selling, it's taking care. And I love your example that you said, I work with somebody, I build a relationship for 8-9 years. And I can clearly, sincerely hear that you are in for the relationship, because somebody else would have said, I cannot be bothered. They didn't buy anything in 8 years. They're not going to buy something in the next 10 years.
And I think that's very key, because you see people that are, when people look to come into the industry, and as I've done a lot of mentoring with our younger brokers, and and I've interviewed a lot of people for the business, and I say to them, if you think it's a get-rich-quick job, you are deluded. It takes a huge amount of time. You've got to have an incredibly thick skin. It can be incredibly frustrating. It can also be very, very, at the end of the day, it's rewarding. I mean, I get a passion for it, and I love when I'm in a shipyard, for example, and you're doing a new build, and you see that project coming together. It's quite incredible. You start with a bit of steel, and then, it comes out of the shipyard at the end of the day. It's this incredible, beautifully designed yacht.
Love the passion.
But it is the passion. It's not. If you focus, I would say, if you focus on the commission, you will fail. Yeah, and that is a really key thing from my standpoint. And I think when I call them Instagram brokers, when they approach you, they don't focus on the client. They focus on the wrong thing. And I think what we're saying here is like you've got to have that key focus on the client, their needs, and if you do that, then the rewards will come. If you are honest, true, loyal, and do a professional job for that client.
No, I love that, because it's very clear. we choose you for a reason, because you also know you are standing out in terms of quality and what you're standing for. If it's you as a broker, meaning broker, some people have just somebody who's intermediate, but I believe you two are a great example of it's about building relationships, and a relationship goes beyond the sale. And this is what I loved about what you say about Sanlorenzo. You were not focusing on what it is. You said we are on a journey together. And clearly this journey begins when they get their vote almost. That is a more important part. And this is what our research also points out. So you two are great examples for the industry, but we also need to address the elephant in the room that not everybody in the industry is like you guys.
I think it's interesting whenever, for example, in the yachting industry, one of the most important moments is whenever a client decides they want to build a boat, buy a boat, sell a boat, charter a boat, or just own a boat. And they will normally reach out to 2, 3, maybe 4 different houses, brokerage houses, for a pitch to find out which one of these companies do I want to work with. And I think typically in any, it's called a central agency presentation, but typically in that meeting, a client, and the client can either be the UBO or it can be the owner's rep or it can be whatever. But they're normally thinking 3 things in their mind, and we're talking about relationship building and how does that work, and well, what even decides which of those 4 different companies will a client work with. So the first question they're asking themselves is, does the person that's in front of me, which might be like a Richard, does this person come across like they understand what they're doing, they're at the top of their game, they are incredibly skilled and experienced at selling or charting, whatever it is, whatever I'm looking for. They are the top of their game, they're the best in the business, they understand the gig. That's the first question. And I will get that impression based on what Richard says, how he says it, the tools he's using for marketing, and the questions he asks me. Like Richard was saying, 2 ears, 1 mouth. So lots of questions, so I can be giving answers. And that's how the relationship starts to build. Second question that me as a client, I'm asking myself is, does Richard understand what I'm looking for specifically? How I intend to use the yacht, where I intend to go, what I intend to do with it. Or if I'm selling a boat, does he understand my boat specifically? It's not just a generic conversation we're having. Does he understand my specific Sanlorenzo that's 7 years old, that's been around the world, has got some work needing done to it. I've done some things to it, I've changed some. Does he understand my boat and how to place it on the market? So has he listened to me? Does he understand my needs? Second question, really important. Third question is, can I work with these people? And that won't just be Richard, it'll be Richard and his team. It may be some yacht management people, maybe some charter management people. Can I work with these people? Because we're not always going to be friends, we may have little arguments along the way. Can I work with them? And then there's a fourth secret question, which is, if I do work with them, when it comes to talking to my friends, my own ecosystem, my own network, will I feel pride to talk about Richard and Burgess? Is that a company and a brand with a perception and a DNA that I feel sits nicely in my ecosystem of brands and companies that I work with elsewhere in my life? Would I be proud to say to my friend, I use Richard at Burgess, go and work with Richard at Burgess? And whenever they go and look up Burgess online or whatever else, they like what they see. So that's a great example where perception and getting the answers to those 4 questions is where marketing, the branding, the perception of the brand, the DNA, what does it stand for? Does that match my ecosystem? And does Richard and his team, do they match what I'm looking for? And do they understand what I need? Not generically, what I need.
And this connects very well to what we're studying at Lexden Luxe. We actually developed a framework that is called the MEPA framework, and managing expectations. So really understanding what the client is all about. The person likes, the person needs is absolutely a pivotal moment for the brand or for really whomever works for these people.
I think what you say about the managing expectations, that's key. I do with my MEBA hat on, we do some of the training for the brokers that starts just starting out. And as part of that, obviously, you need to be managing when you're going through the sales process. Once you've got control of a deal, you need to manage the expectations of the buyer and the seller all the way through that and communicate. Because it's saying there will be times when everybody is falling out. And your job then as the broker is, is to say you are the conductor of an orchestra. And whenever something goes out of tune, whether it's the buyer, the seller, the lawyers, or all one of those, it's your job to bring that back to the table and make sure that everyone is playing the same tune again. So very key on managing expectations, because it's
not easy.
It's not easy.
But it's challenging. But it's the most perfect part. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because one thing we found is when you look at the MEPA framework, managing expectations, if you do it well, all the other things ultra high net worth individuals can forgive.
Yeah.
They always say, Professor, if they just would have told me, I wouldn't have a problem with it. And there comes then things that we talked about, remember? One-stop shopping.
Yeah.
That you have people who are key account manager. They are like the ducks, steady over the water, paddling like crazy. But if I have one person like you, Richard, that I can trust, and you say to me, instead of saying, yes, I know the solution, or we have that, what they want to hear is, no, I'm not the expert in this.
Yeah.
But give me a week and I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
This is what they're trying to hear. Transparency creates trust.
Yeah.
And we know with dealing with ultra high net worth individuals, what a lot of companies are struggling with is say, oh, we need to be the best. We need to delight. We need to wow. And I said, no, the opposite is the truth. They say, just tell me, plain and simple, this is the worst case scenario. And they say, fair enough. Let's go from there. So I love what you're saying about that. And I also loved our conversation.
Exactly. We discussed about that, and we need to be very candid about what we can deliver, what we cannot. But also, when we are talking about yachting, we are talking about a customer experience that is extremely complex. If we compare even to other luxury industries, it's incredibly complex. So we are talking about an ecosystem, and so we need to be aware that every single component cannot deliver the full satisfaction. So we need to be very clear what we can deliver and to team with the people that complement us. For instance, in our field, okay, they like the product, they like the brand, but then they need a number of other services because they want maybe the boat to be managed. They want somebody to help them to find the right crew. They want somebody to help them to find the right flag. They want somebody to find the right fiscal structure. They want somebody to have the right financing. So they want even to have some advice on the wealth management side, how they approach this kind of experience. And they want us to be coherent and consistent and very transparent in providing that. And at that point, they can find that together we can deliver. Together we can deliver this experience. And that's why, I said before, we like to be in the place where all those gatekeepers are mostly based. Because working together, we can find the right solution for that specific client, which maybe has not yet taken the decision in the last 10 years because he didn't find the perfect alignment. And that, but in those 10 years, somebody in this room understood which could be the perfect alignment. So he can come here and to bring together the different pieces to deliver. That's the secret, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more. We mapped out once the service ecosystem in yachting, how an ultra high net worth individual yacht owner perceives it. And I remember a colleague of mine looked at it and he says, it looks like a motherboard from a computer. Like, how can you cut through the noise and through the mess? And we had this conversation. And I said, you don't need to be a conglomerate that owns everybody. But I think you guys are on the forefront also in saying we need to collaborate more. We can have somebody who manages the relationship. It doesn't have to be me. It can be somebody else. And if there's a knowledge I don't have, I just look in my Lego box and say, here we got it.
Here we go.
But if you say, oh no, you need to talk with them, and for this you need to talk with them, this is where you lose the client. Because one thing of the MEPA framework is, and we all know it, what's the most valuable resource an ultra high net worth individual has? It's time. And if you say no for this, you destroy the time thinking. But if you have somebody who says, I'll take care of it, they are there. And I love that guys like you, in particular Sanlorenzo, we had this conversation, are moving towards this one-stop shopping. In other industries, it's very common. They call it key account manager. You know, I don't know everything, but I will find it out for you, and you only have to deal with me.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, from us, from a standpoint, you know, the greatest number of people we employ within the business is in our yacht management division. You know, because it is, you know, it's very, very labour intensive. But from that, we are trying to ensure that we're looking after, as you're saying, that client from their first steps into yachting. And you mentioned accruing and putting budgets together. And I think that's key as well. You've got to be very open from the outset and saying, this is what it's going to cost to run. Because if you come in under that, if it comes a bit under that, or it's on budget, they'll be happy. But if it's double at the end of the year, it's a bit like a yacht. We're saying time and money is, you know, important to these people. It being late, you know, you deliver a boat and, you know, it's due on the last week of June. I mean, it's very dangerous for a shipyard.
Also,
When it comes in October, they're not, you know, that's...
exactly. Also, because the new generation of ultra high net worth individuals, we are not talking anymore about the second, third, fourth generation born with a silver spoon. We talk people here who built their own still running business. For them, they really look at, will it be delivered? Can you manage my expectation? Will you be on time? And will it be also in the price that you mentioned?
But that was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much all for being here. We're running out of time, so we have to cut it here. But really, I really appreciate you being here. Next episode will be all about AI and technology and how system integration makes it easier for ultra high net worth individuals. So stay tuned and we'll see you soon.
Well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations.